Folks, welcome inside the Parisi Palace, high above 3733 East Broadway. This is a live edition of the Jake Feinberg Show, comedy on Power Talk. Please go to our website, powertalk.live. Download our free app and stream all of our live local programming, including Solomon on Blast, the Jim Parisi Show, and yours truly, the Jake Feinberg Show. And can't thank you enough for making us part of your day today. And after 6 years of just woodshedding and running the break with luminary artists of all sorts, I get to pivot back to my true nature, my original true nature, which was sports, and more specifically the loyalty and the camaraderie and the sharing that existed at a certain time in our cultural heritage and our history. I get to go deep today with a prolific college and pro basketball player, also a tremendous coach, and a guy who's still creating, still doing his thing, and just an honor to connect with him. Henry Bibby, welcome to the Jake Feinberg Show.
Jake, thanks for having me on. I love basketball as much as you do, okay? So I feel where you are.
Well, I wanted you to talk a little bit, just to start. I mean, you guys had these prolific teams with UCLA going back to the early 70s. Just for the point of reference, I was born in 1978. But I wanted you to go back and talk about a specific time in that run of success when you realized that it was actually the mental part of the game was actually more difficult than the physical part of the game.
So true, Jake. I had, a lot of that in my background, the discipline that was needed to get to another level. And once I went to UCLA, working with Coach Wooden, things just happened that way. They recruited people that wanted to win, and he taught us how to play. It's an art that's been lost today in young people growing up. The AAU is really good for a lot of the young people, but it's also bad at times for young people because you get away from the grassroots of basketball. And that's where we need to stay for kids to get better. And that's why I'm involved in my program now with the Dribble Pro basketball that I invented, and we can talk about that later. But getting back to the grassroots is what I've always done, and it's kept me in the game for so many years as a basketball player and the fundamental grassroots as a coach. Go ahead.
This is the point. I see, coming from, I'm a Gen Xer, and I have two daughters that are 11 and 4. So I actually would counter you by saying I think the grassroots are more difficult today because we are not as mentally strong. And so I was trying to ask you before about a period of time in that winning streak when you realized that your mental toughness was had to be far greater than anything physical.
It was the mental toughness, and that's the makeup, where your background, where you come from. But again, it's not being taught anymore. The grassroots of basketball is not taught. You have these kids that are so athletic, and they go to college for 1 year, and then they move on to the NBA, and there's really no teaching, only being in 1 year. But it's a business. All this is a business. That's what it boils down to, first and foremost. It's not about really teaching the kids anymore. It's about now the projection of all these young men and women who have potential to be great 3, 4, 5 years down the road, and that's when they're developed, opposed to years ago at the root of basketball, they stayed in college for 4 years. So a 4-year kid who has a lot of talent is much further along years ago than a kid that plays 1 year now and goes in.
Talking to Henry Bibby here on the Jake Feinberg Show. Let's just break down. I think this is important because, I want you to talk about, well, how did John Wooden recruit you originally? How did he find you?
Well, there was a lady in South Carolina who knew of me, and she knew of another basketball player that went to UCLA named Kenny Washington out of South Carolina. So she saw me play, and she recommended me to UCLA, and UCLA, they kept seeing my name come up as one of the top players in the South. And that's how it kind of all got started. They came back to see me play. The first game, they didn't think I was good enough to probably play at UCLA, but I visited with my coach, after the game. He said, hey, just go and play your game. So the next night I had like 50 points, and UCLA said, this guy can play for us. And that's when it all started. Well, it was a big deal for me to leave, the South in 1968, where integration and segregation was just starting, and to move to California. I had a high school graduation class of 19 kids. There were 150 kids in my high school.
Wow.
So I went from that to 40,000 student body at UCLA in a metropolis. So life was different. Life was changing, but that's how I kind of got started. And the drive that I had received from my parents, pushed me and made me go. So there was nothing that was going to stop me. I was very determined to be the best basketball player I could be, and to get the best education that I could get.
Could you spend a moment? I think it's important. You talk about the grassroots and the lineage of the game of basketball, but you go back to your folks. Their generation was one of civil disobedience. I mean, I talk to the cats all the time, the musicians, about having to overcome cultural bias. People have. Can you talk about the segregation, how fierce it was, and if there was a defining moment when you saw your father or mother stand up for themselves and embolden you to say, we are all human beings and nobody deserves to be treated the way that African American people were being treated in the South at that time?
Well, they never stood up because there was a lot of suppression at the time. In the South, and black people did not really have a voice. Black people didn't stand up, so they never stood up. But they knew that there were opportunities out there for their kids, and that's what they thought about with me. I had my aunt, finished college. My mom and dad had third and fourth grade education, so they never went to school. But they knew how important it was for their kids to move on. And my two brothers ended up graduating from school. Like I said before, my two aunts went on to finish college. But it was just it was a great opportunity that they saw for me to move on, to do something better than being a farmer, and sharecropping and all that. They didn't want to see me do that. So that's the era that I came from. And again, I had parents that didn't want me to be that. They wanted me to be something bigger and better than what they were. And they, inside saw the world changing, and they put me in a situation where I could be successful, and that was at UCLA. And I could, down the road, compete with other people and other cultures to survive. That's what it was all about at the time. That they didn't even know that they were doing, that they did.
Well, that's what I'm trying to get at here, because we have now created a situation in our country where, you go off and get, quote unquote, an education, as I did. You go to college. But, I mean, your parents were not, quote unquote, educated, and they didn't, quote unquote, advocate or stand up because they probably would have been killed. But inside, the question is, they had a drive, and they put it on you, and they emphasized it with you. Did you, as a kid, before you went off to UCLA, did you say, Mom, Dad, why won't you stand? Like, what was their response when you said, well, I don't want to take this anymore. I'm tired of this stuff. What would they say to you? They said, we're doing this for you. I'm just trying to get to this point of saying that their social consciousness was not wrapped in academia. It was wrapped in being just sharecroppers. I mean, not even getting paid sometimes. And instead of pushing back, they didn't. They did it for their kids. And I just want to know what you used to say to, if it was frustrating for you, if you wanted them to push back, and what they would say to you.
Well, I didn't know the difference myself, so I wasn't in a position to push back at the time. I remember my brother would come back home. He had gone to Vietnam, and he said, "Why do you say yes, sir, to people? Why do you say yes, sir, to the white people?" And this was just what happened in the South at that time. You talk about in the 50s. So you're talking about something that hadn't moved on. That this is what my parents grew up with their whole life. My dad was born in, I think, 1929 and all that. So he's born during that time of the year where you don't say anything. You don't say anything back, and you call everybody sir and yes sir. That was just the way it was. So I didn't know any difference myself until I went off to UCLA to see there was a totally different world, and the prejudice wasn't out there as much as it was in the South. So I moved in, and when I moved to Los Angeles, I moved in with a white family, and I locked my door every night because I knew that something bad was going to happen. And I ended up, thinking that, all people are the same. All people are good. All people are bad. A lot of people are good. A lot of people are bad. So I went the whole spectrum of not being involved at all with the white race of people to loving the white race of people, because the family that I lived with treated me special. They treated me like I was human, which I was. They treated me that way. They loved me, and I ended up loving the family that I lived with. That years before, I never thought that would happen, or even live in a house with white people, or eat with white people. So my life has come, full circle around, where now I look at people as being people. I don't see any color. As I grew up, seeing color, as I moved through my spectrum of life, I don't see any color anymore. It's not any color out there for me. People are people. Good people, bad people. It comes in all races. It doesn't matter.
No, I that's an inspirational story. First of all, just the idea that you went off and stayed with a family is so unorthodox compared to today when you just be stuffed into a dorm. But you still, would you say, John Wooden, could you talk about, did he come to see you at South Carolina, or were they sending scouts over there? When was the first time you actually connected with that cat?
Well, they had a recruit, Jake Hardy, rest in peace, who passed away in May.
Yep.
Came to recruit me for UCLA. And Coach Wooden would do a basketball camp in Bowie Creek, North Carolina, which is probably 100 miles from me, every summer. So in the process of him going to the camp, he stopped in to see my family and to talk about UCLA. And he talked about how great my family was, what down-to-earth people they were. And he was that way. And he grew up, in Martinville, Indiana, which is very prejudiced as well. But he didn't have a prejudiced bone in his body. This was a fine Christian man who came in my home and saw my family for who they were, and they saw him for who he was. So it was a great relationship of getting started, and he came back that way and saw me play, and he wanted me to come out that way to go to school. So I came out to California and, didn't look back. It was just a super experience with all the people, and my total life changed about everything. It's so interesting that people can move from one economic background to another.
Yeah, right.
and blossom, and blossom.
That's unbelievable. No, it's absolutely, this is totally inspiring. But for me, like in today's world, you get, there's this, hyper reactive. We're saturated with information. Who the recruits are. That a lot of times cats now. Who knows if Henry Bibby was playing in 2017, you might have made a jump right to the NBA now. But how intrinsically could you just talk to the audience worldwide about how you were discovered? Because we were not fully interconnected at that time. And the fact is that cats from across the country at the time in the Golden State, they came on your radar. How did that happen? You're down in rural South Carolina.
Well, it's connections. There's they've had basketball reports for years and years that I had talked to my freshman coach at UCLA, Gary Cunningham, and he said, we saw your name come up all the time on this list as being one of the top players in North Carolina, but you're kind of so far away. And there were so many good basketball players in California that they didn't recruit really outside of California. They went and got Kareem Jabbar, Lucius Allen out of Kansas City. And eventually Kenny Washington came from South Carolina. So they didn't do much, and Mike Warren from Indiana, but not a lot of recruiting outside of California because there's so many junior colleges and high school in California. But again, this lady made the phone call for me. You know, it's always somebody watching you, Jake.
I dig, man. I dig. Yeah.
You know, it's like musicians. They can be found in the backwoods. Eventually, they're going to be found. If you're good, you're going to be found. So I was kind of found that way. You know, when my name kept coming up, you know, people started calling on my behalf. Newspaper articles come out. And that's how it kind of got started. And, you know, with the blink of an eye and sitting down with, you know, my family, my high school coach, my principal, making the decision to come to California and to play for UCLA, just turned my life around. Now, if I had to do it again, looking back, not sure if I would do it. I mean, it's really exploring life and not. You know, I never flown in an airplane until I came to California at age 18 years old. So everything was new. I never had a steak. I didn't know what a steak was. You know, what were pancakes? I never knew anything like that.
Wait,
so,
you never had a country fried? Never had any meat in South Carolina?
We had real good meat. We didn't have the meat they make in California. Okay? We had the real,
exactly, man.
The good old country ham. You know, the country ham with the bone in it, and it's been salted in the smokehouse. It's been hanging for months.
Love it. I love it.
So, you know, that's the type of life I've been living to. And I remember when I first came to California, I never ate with these people that I was living with. There was a place called Tiny Nailers in Westwood. And every day, every morning, I was working during the summertime, and that's why they wanted me to come out to make some extra money. So I always go to Tiny Nailers during the summertime in the morning to get me real breakfast. And my breakfast ended up being fried chicken, okay? Fried chicken is what I love.
It sounds great, man. It sounds real good.
They didn't make anything else. They didn't make anything else that I wanted to eat. So, you know. But, you know, my whole life changed, and my whole outlook on people changed. And you know, it's just love for people in general, not just a certain race of people. You love people. People who treat you good, people who treat you nice, come in all colors. And that's how I made the change over to start dealing with people and seeing people for who they really are.
Talking to Henry Bibby, having a ball here on the Jake Feinberg Show. This winning streak that occurred, what was the state of the team like? I mean, did Coach Wooden talk to you and say, you know, where was the team at before you got there? And what kind of ascension did it take off? I mean, did it really take off the year you got there?
Well, you know, they had won a couple of championships with Walt Hazzard and Gail Goodrich in the 60s, early 60s, 64, 65, I believe. And before I got there, Kareem Jabbar had won like 3 championships. So they were on, they had won, you know, 4, 5, 6 championships when I got there. So we kind of carried it on. We kind of carried the history on when I got there. I won 3 championships. We were 88 wins and 3 losses during my 3 years playing at UCLA. And I think Coach Wooden just wanted to lose those 3 games because we always won. And he would always say, you know, we won a few games close. We might want to lose a game just to get us back on track again. This guy was so far advanced in his time. It's incredible, and that's why I tried to take a lot of what Coach Wooden has done and bottle it up and give it back to the young people and the parents who are interested in their kid, you know, learning how to play and be a better basketball player, if that's what they want to be. I mean, Coach Wooden talked about you can be whatever you want to be, but you have to put in the time and the effort, and you have to be smart about which direction you're going to go to make it happen.
Can you talk about a specific encounter you've had recently with either youth or parents where you've used some of that ball of enlightenment that Wooden gave you?
Well, you know, I did it when I was at USC. A lot of that I did. You know, he had some sayings like, you know, discipline yourself where others don't have to. You know, stuff like that. Those sayings is what I carried over to the parents that come in. And he always had an open door policy to talk to the families because he would say, these are kids. You need to talk to the parents and let the parents know what your thinking is. And I was opposed by a lot of my coaches about doing that and say, you can't talk to the parents, man. I wanted to talk to parents to let them know what I was thinking and where their kid is. I did a thumbnail sketch before every season to have the parents write down what their kid is all about. I didn't want to go in trying to figure out your kid. I want to know your kid where I could maximize every inch of him getting better.
This is fascinating. I mean, how much of it? So you said when was USC? In what years were you there at USC?
I was at SC from 1997 to 2007, 2008.
Okay, so this is more of a sociological question, but I mean, here it is. Your folks, grew up during the era of tremendous amount of civil injustice and lack of civil rights, and your generation really helped kind of push it over and actually make some momentum. But I mean, is it hard? Was it hard? Have you seen? Is it harder to connect with families because of the collapse of the nuclear family? I mean, we have tons of absentee parenting across all. It's as far as I'm concerned, we are one human race. So across all the human race, we've had a collapse in the nuclear family. How do you connect with parents if these cats are coming in totally gifted, but they've been raised by they've been on the streets?
Well, Jake, everybody wants love.
I know.
My thing was love.
Me too, man. My show is about love. Yeah.
Yeah. My parents were very loving people, very giving people, very down the earth, the salt of the earth people. So, that's transferred over to me. So when I got into coaching and at SC, I wanted to have a relationship with every kid on my team. I wanted to kind of be the stepdad for every kid, if he had a dad or not. And I promised the kids one thing. You come here, you will graduate from this university. You will graduate with a degree from this university. It's a $40,000 a year job you have to do. I ask you to play basketball and go to class. I'm going to give you everything else. And I told the parents, let me have your kid. Write that thumbnail sketch down of who your kid is. I'll love your kid the rest of the time. And all my kids had my phone number. They could call me anytime. I have an open door policy for them to come in. You have to develop a relationship. Kids want relationships. People want relationships. And this is what I taught to my basketball players. You have a relationship with me. There's nothing I wouldn't do for you. I want to get the best out of you, and I'm going to tell you the truth at all the time. So you have to be able to accept the truth. My big thing is tell me the truth, and I can deal with it. So all my players knew that they could deal with the situation. They knew they had someone in their corner. It was the same way in the NBA as I went in as an assistant coach. My job wasn't X's and O's. My job was to get players to be the best basketball players they could be. And how do you do that? You develop a relationship with them. How are your families? What's going on with your families? What's happening in your life? And they truly can see if you're sincere about that. And I was sincere about that. And that's how you work with kids and work with people, is to have a relationship and a concern for the outcome of their life. Not just coming in and playing basketball, because everybody's not going to be a pro basketball player. Probably not any going to be a pro basketball player. And I would tell them that. You're not going to be a pro basketball player. So what else are we going to do for you? What else are we going to do? Are you going to class? You're going to school? What do you want to study? And every time I would go out and talk to the alumni, I would take some of these kids with me, because I wanted the alumni to see them, because these are good kids who are smart kids. Maybe you can help them get a job in your firm. So, and they saw that I was trying to do that. They saw the honesty that I was having. And the kids played hard for me every game, every year they played hard for me. And they were saying, why is your basketball team, which is a football school, why are you winning? Because they had love for me and I had love for them. And everybody would go the extra mile. They would go the extra mile, I would go the extra mile.
Henry, I wanted to. This is phenomenal. I mean, could you explain how we got to again being 39 years old and actually really kind of departing from sports in a lot of ways because of the sterility and the corporatization of it? How did we get to a point where, like, you're coming in and talking legitimately about cats that are coming in, trying to bust their butt on the court, go to class, hopefully take the tests and the exams themselves, graduate, get a gig, because not everybody's going to the NBA. When did we start? I remember Ryan Sandberg from the Cubs got a 7-year, $49 million contract, okay? This was like the early 90s. People were freaking out. He was already a very well-established Major League Baseball player. But how did your job become harder, or how did you have to adapt when all of a sudden cats were coming in with this is more to the pro level, but where they were already given a huge amount of money up front before they had ever proven anything? I mean, maybe you were given a scholarship to go to UCLA. You were put into a beautiful home with people that you learned to love as people, but you weren't getting paid. You had done nothing yet. And that's part of the issue now is you're getting all this compensation before you've ever done anything. So you don't even know if the person's really an authentically, truly good player or not. And I just wonder if there was a defining moment that you can point to, a couple of defining moments when we got to this point of reward before any actual success.
You know, I'm not exactly sure, Jake, when it started. I know years ago, Jim McMillan, who played for Kentucky State, was drafted in the ABA, which is an old league. And I think he signed a $600,000 contract years ago. And it started to turn a little bit during that time. Big business, Jake, big business, big TV revenue. It's all a business now. And they go on speculations. You look at the NBA drafts this year, they drafted one kid who averaged 4 points a game and 4 rebounds a game in the first round. So they look at people now and say potentially he's going to be good. And there's so much money that's being paid, you know, and from sponsors that they can make mistakes paying these guys a lot of money. It's that much money is being made. If they can give a player $200 million to play basketball, what do you think the owner is making on that? So $200 million is no money for a team to pay a LeBron James when the owner's making billions and billions of dollars. People think it's a lot of money, but it's really no money in the big scheme of things. But it's all on speculation now. I don't know when it turned.
I mean, was it? I mean, when speculation. I mean, that's one thing. What I'm trying to say is, okay, so it's all a business now. How is the game affected in your mind by it just being a business as opposed to a passion, loyalty? I mean, you don't even. I mean, when you were assistant in the pros, I mean, it's so transient now that you'd have some cats, you know, they'd come for, you know, the way it is, they come for a year, they're gone. I mean, you don't even, back when I was growing up with the Pistons, back in the you know, I was a diehard Piston fan, every year you knew what the backcourt was. It was Dumars and Isaiah, you had James Edwards, Lane Beer, Rick Mahorn, and all the rivalries, they had their cats too. I'm not trying to be Pollyannish, but how is the game changed by it just being speculative, business, bottom line, that?
You know, there's so many lawyers that got involved. There's so many
bean counters.
Yeah. It's just so many people now with rules and regulations, and you know who has the upper hand that can change the rules. You know, the owners had it a couple of years ago, where they had a big percentage, and the players said, "No, we're not going to play unless we get a certain percentage." So it goes back and forth on who has the power. Who has the power to make the changes? Like I said, the players have it at times, and the owners have it. It goes back and forth. But it boils down, the bottom line boils down to is the money side of it. The sponsors that are given to these teams.
You know, I just would like you to talk, a lot of people, when you came from high school, I mean, you scored 50 points in that game, turned some heads, and they said, yeah, you know, we'll give you a shot at UCLA. When you came to UCLA, how did you have to adapt your game? What did Coach Wooden implore on you to say, listen, we can reach we can be a team of a superior team, but we need you to do these things. Did you have to adjust your game a little bit when you got there?
Yeah, because you had 15 Henry Bibbies and some better. So you have to make the adjustment if you want to play. He had a certain way he wanted to play, and you had to play the way he wanted you to play to fit in. I remember Sidney Wicks, who was, Sports Illustrated Player of the Year, couldn't even play 1 year for him because he was trying to play the way he wanted to play and not the way Coach Wooden wanted to play. So you have to make changes, and if you're a good basketball player and you're a team player, you make adjustments to be able to change. So I changed over from the type of player I was in high school to a better basketball player. And Coach Wooden taught me and taught all these other guys that's on the team how to be a better basketball player. Without Coach Wooden, I'm not an NBA player. I don't play as long as I did in the NBA. I don't coach in the NBA. If I don't have a guy like John Wooden in my corner that has taught me some of the smaller things of life, just how to tie your shoes, how to put on your socks. A guy teaches you that, which I didn't know. I'm a good basketball player, but I didn't know, how many pair of socks to wear or what kind of shoes to wear. So he taught me, from my feet up, how to be a good basketball player. And that's why I say you go back to the grassroots, and that's what we've gotten away from now. I mean, you ask a kid now how many pair of socks you should wear to protect your feet, and he couldn't tell you. So I'll give you $1 million if you could tell me how many pair of socks to wear, and not one kid I bet could tell you how many pair of socks to wear.
Oh, you got to tell me. I'm fascinated. I never knew there was a certain amount of. How many socks do you have to wear?
You should wear 2 pair of socks.
Wow.
One to absorb the sweat and one to absorb the shock of the floor. Uh-huh. And your feet are so important because if you get a blister or anything like that, then you can't play. And that was one of Coach Wooden's pet peeves. Your feet have to be ready to play when you come in. The first letter we got was, your feet have to be ready.
I love this. Give me some more grassroots stuff. This is so refreshing to hear this stuff. I mean, what are the first of all, what was Wicks doing? Wicks just wanted to play and demand the ball. I mean, what was the reason why he wouldn't what was the system that Wooden wanted, and what was Wicks wanting to do?
Well, he just wanted to do his type of thing. He wanted to play the way he wanted to play, and he was very athletic, very talented. He came from junior college, and he was the hero. And Coach Wooden, what he was good at was, shaping his team. And again, as you go through basketball and you make adjustments, you're going to be shaped. You're going to be shaped into the type of player that's going to best fit the basketball team. And the same thing happened with me when I came from high school. I was a prolific scorer. I was inside and outside a lot, and I know I would drive inside and get my shot blocked, and Coach Wooden used to look at me and say, Henry, you can't do that. You can't do that. And I would say, this guy really doesn't know what he's talking about. And I would go back in there again and get my shot blocked, and he would just sit there and shake his head, and eventually I knew. So, he shaped and molded me into something that I would pass on. When my kid played in the NBA, Mike Bibby played in the NBA, you never saw him drive much to the basket. Because, again, I taught him you can't get in there because they block your shot. So he always had a little short runner inside before the big guy could get there. So Coach shaped and molded me into being that type of player. And eventually, Sidney Wicks the next year was College Player of the Year. After not playing for 1 year, and Coach said, you're not going to play unless you play the right way. And Sidney played the correct way, and he was the best player in college basketball the next year.
I just also want to know, I mean, I was hanging out with this amazing, gifted keyboardist out in Henderson, Clarence McDonald, who played a lot of ball, and he was talking about Toberman's Gym. Did you play a lot of, can you talk about the fierce pickup games there with Maurice Lucas and those cats? I mean, he was talking about, I mean, that's where all the cats would play.
Well, we used to come out here in L.A. When I was a freshman. And there was a guy named Arkansas Red. I used to go to the gym with Sidney and Curtis. This is my first time. We used to go, in the inner city and play basketball. And I used to shoot it so deep. And they said, man, they got a guy here, Arkansas Red, who shoots it better than you. And this guy was unbelievable. Never heard of him, never played before in his life. You talk about the best pickup playground player there is.
Wow.
Shooting the basketball. Just unbelievable.
35 footers?
And
I mean, just draining 35 footers all the time?
Just draining them all the time.
Oh, man.
I mean, we had the best pickup games in the inner city with these guys who never played basketball before. So it's been an interesting road to travel since, coming from a town of 1,300 people in the South, from a high school of 19 kids in my graduation class to what has happened at UCLA.
This is speaking of. You have this new invention, Dribble Pro 3-in-1, training basketball by Henry Bibby. I want you to talk about that, and then also the idea of. I mean, one reason I have a very difficult time watching games now is just the isolationist component to basketball, where you have guys that are just taking it. They're going to take it one-on-one off the dribble, and four guys are left sort of just standing around. And it seemed, I mean, Wooden's philosophy was, I don't know, move the ball, everybody getting involved. So can you talk about this basketball training, this Dribble Pro, dribbling and passing by Henry Bibby? You go.
Well, Jake, is dribbling, shooting, and rebounding. It's a 3-in-1 training tool that I invented about 4 or 5 years ago. And Kobe Bryant said last year year before last, when he retired, he said we've gotten away from learning how to play basketball and knowing how to play basketball. And I had this idea. I was saying, if I'm going to leave something behind, if I'm going to leave a legacy behind, why not leave something that young people will remember and be able to solve a problem that they're having in playing basketball? So I came up with this basketball that has 4 nodules on it, Jake, and it's a training tool. It teaches you, with me, teaches you how to dribble, how to keep your hand on top of the basketball, how to control the basketball. It teaches you how to hold the basketball, to shoot it the correct way. It teaches you that. If you put your hands on one of these nodules and you hold it incorrectly, or if it hit the backboard and it hits one of these 4 nodules that's on there, it's going to bounce away from you.
Wow.
So, it gives you, this basketball, gives you self-confidence. You play with a purpose the whole time, which a lot of kids don't. It teaches you how to play with a purpose. It puts you in a better balance for footwork, where you're in the proper stance all the time. Self-discipline. It helps you to use your imagination, and that's what it's all about. And it's fun. So it's a fun game, and we learn things through fun. And this basketball teaches them that you go out and you dribble with it. You don't even think you're getting better, but when you get a regular basketball, you're going to get better because it's muscle memory that you use with this basketball. And when you're dribbling this basketball, Jake, your eyes become your hands, and you don't have to look at the basketball anymore. So, I think I've taken it back to Dr. Naismith years ago when he invented the basketball in 1891. I think I'm right there with him in inventing this training tool that will have an impact on kids who want to get better, and who parents are saying, I want my kid to have the edge. I want my kid to be competitive. I want my kid to be better than your kid. This is something that you go on, and I would buy it. A quick story. My son, Mike Bibby, who played 14 years in the NBA, when he was growing up, they had these jumping shoes, and he couldn't jump, over paper. So I got him these jumping shoes. He ended up improving his jumping 4 to 5 inches in a matter of 3 or 4 months using this jumping tool. And it cost me $125. I couldn't afford it, but my thinking was, I want my kid to be competitive. I want my kid to be better than your kid. So what is an investment of $125? This is an investment of $89.99, Jake, and you're training with me every day. You're training with a guy of 40 years experience who played in the NBA for 9 years, who was a college All-American, 3 NCAA championships, an NBA championship, a CBA championship in minor leagues. So I've been around basketball, so I have an idea of what kids need to do to get better. And this is what this does, Jake.
I'm going to ask you to unpack this thing. You said something interesting. You said, I teach cats to play with a purpose. My generation, younger generations, purpose could mean on the court, okay, I don't really care what pairs of socks I have. I just need to get my 25 points. I need to get my at least 16 looks at the basket, and hopefully we'll get the victory. But that's my purpose. What do you mean by purpose?
Purpose is when you're out on the floor, being able to do things you want to do that enables your team to win. That's what it's all about. It's not about individual performances. So the purpose we have is to make people around us better. That's the whole definition of purpose. When I'm coaching, my purpose is to bring everyone together to make it better. And it's the same thing that goes in basketball. The purpose is I'm going to perfect what I do, and I'm going to make everyone around me better. And, of course, I'm going to be better in the process of doing this. So there's a purpose to this, not just going out playing basketball and saying that I can dribble. Everybody says, well, I can dribble. I know how to shoot. I know how to rebound. No, you don't. When you start playing with a purpose, it's going to really become easy after you use this dribble pro and you go back, Jake, and you start using a regular basketball. It's like night and day.
Unbelievable. January 23rd, 1971, you were number one in the country. You went to South Bend, Indiana, which probably was not very far from Coach Wooden's hometown, and you lost to Notre Dame. Do you remember that? Do you remember that game? 89, 82?
I remember that game.
Did that sting Wood? I mean, how did they just? What was Wooden's reaction? That must have stung a little bit because that was his home turf there.
Well, like I say, Coach Wooden never talked about winning, never talked about losing. I've never heard him say the word win or lose in my 4 years of being at UCLA. Never did. So his whole thing was, we want to be competitive, we want to do the right things, we want to be fundamentally sound, and whatever the outcome is going to be, it's going to be successful for us. So, but again, like I said at the top of the show, Jake, he wanted games to be close, or he wanted us to lose a game to get back on track. So if you look at all the games that we played and the games were close or we lost the games right before we would go into the Pac-8, which was at that time, the Pac-8 playing. So in the process of doing that psychologically, he was so smart that, we would win 12, 13 games in preseason. Now we go into the conference play. He didn't want to lose any conference games. So we would lose or be close during the non-conference schedule. And once the season started, that's when we blew up and we got better. And that's what kind of happened in Indiana. I'm not taking anything away. I'm sorry, from Notre Dame. No. We're not taking anything away from them. They were a great, great basketball team. But in the process, that propelled us to be a better basketball team and losing that. That was a big streak. I think we won, 47 games or something like that year going into that. And after that, the streak went on long after that. But again, that's kind of something he wanted us to do, is to have a little scare. But we met a great team in Austin Carr. He was just unbelievable that day and just unstoppable.
What kind of tunes were you? I mean, L.A. was a hotbed. You came after the Watts riots, which were kind of a very, very intense time and impacting sociological time in Southern California. But what kind of tunes were you guys checking out? In the greater Los Angeles area, there was so much vibrancy between. You go back to Harlem. Sugar Ray Robinson had a barbershop in Harlem. You had Wes Montgomery and all these cats playing beautiful melodic improvisation. What kind of music was Henry Bibby checking out on your downtime? I listened to that today, like it was in 1972 and 68. The emotions,
Curtis Mayfield.
Oh yeah. Oh my God. The impressions. Yeah. Unbelievable, man.
Al Green, the Temptations. Rick James. All these are my people. I love those. The Dells, the Delphonics. It's just unbelievable listening to those guys. And like you say, Wes Montgomery was big at the time in jazz. A couple of the jazz people I can't think off the top of my head, but David Sanborn, people like that. Just great.
Did you get to see Miles or Train at all?
I didn't see them. I know John Coltrane. I had a lot of his albums. Those albums. We didn't get the DVDs. We got the albums.
The LPs, absolutely. You had those transcendent, burning, spiritual albums that he was making with Elvin Jones and all those cats. Oh my God!
Yeah, had those. Listen to all those. He was, just unbelievable what they would be playing and how it sounded and how we heard it. It was totally different. So, it's really sad that we can't find music like that anymore. So it's a totally different era of that music now that we don't have anymore. So, I go to the internet and I listen to that all the time. Those guys.
Well, there's something also about, the
and Soul Train. Soul Train was good too, Jake. Soul Train.
Don Cornelius, the unbelievable. No, but I mean, like literally. I mean, there were so many places to go see live music. That's the thing. It would hit your soul. It would touch your soul. Yeah. And that's the thing. You can't get that on YouTube today. And then the fact that they stifle that, whatever, you gentrify certain places and and you stifle that culture, and then cats don't know where their roots are. That's, I guess, a couple questions before I let you go. If you don't know where you came from, then you don't know where you're going. And I'm curious, right. Do younger cats today have an understanding or curiosity about their roots, specifically African American cats, about the roots of the history of this country? Do they have the curiosity to want to know where they came from in order to know where they're going? Because in my mind, you can't really have a social consciousness movement without the sophistication of knowing your roots. And I just want to know how strong you think the roots are amongst today's younger peeps.
Well, Jake, it's not being taught. Again, it's like basketball.
Was it ever taught, though? I mean, your parents taught you.
It's never been taught in the school system, and I don't think it will be. I don't think Black history will ever be taught the way it should be taught. It's never been. I never had any Black history growing up. Never. Booker T. Washington, Dubois. You never found that. You never. You read about just a little bit the inventions of the Black people. It never came out.
No, I mean let's just be very clear. The motherland, okay, the first universities in Africa, the banjo, all the musical instruments in Africa,
right.
Medicines in Africa, and that's the thing is they have a Black History Month every year. It started when I was in school. Why not just? Isn't that part of U.S. history? I guess the point is that do you sense there was an urgency, man, back when you were at UCLA. As far as I'm concerned, you had the Panthers, you had the Muslims, you had so many different outlets. You had the US organizations. I've woodshedded with all these musicians. You could channel this stuff, and so do you find yourself adding that as a component, or is that just too much of a? Is that too outside the realm of basketball for you? I mean, at this point, you talk about leaving a legacy. I mean, the legacy is teach your children well, right?
That's what it should be. Again, that we've gotten away from the basics of everything that we're doing now, and there's just so much emphasis put on the business side of what everybody does. You look at all the music that's created by the hip hop rappers now. It's about the money. It's about making money. It's not about talking about the culture anymore. It's about making money and bling. That's what things have come to. Where does it stop? Where does it go? I don't know. We've just gotten away from that.
The
teaching.
Well, the other thing is that you Curtis Mayfield didn't have a hit record until his third or fourth album. Bruce Springsteen didn't have a hit record. Can you talk about the danger of not allowing true talent to be cultivated? You're going to rush these cats off the stage. They get 15-second tryouts. I mean, I'm amazed at LeBron James. I mean, I remember Michael Jordan played a pickup game with him back when high school, and he said this guy's going to be an incredible player. He's one out of, he's a needle in a haystack. I mean, what is the danger, Henry, when you don't allow your true nature to be truly cultivated? There was we don't have any patience anymore. It's a bottom line thing. If you don't hit it, you're gone. And that's pretty demoralizing for a lot of people, in general, because a lot of, it wasn't like you guys were robots. It took you a while to find your groove. You don't let that happen anymore.
No, but again, hopefully the young people have the drive, because you are going to get knocked down, and you just got to get back up and start again. You can't give up. You can't quit. And there's someone ready to take your place right away. But you got to keep battling with it. But you don't get a second chance too many times this day and time. It's what are you doing today? Are you making it happen today that we can make some money? That's what it's all about. The big businesses are looking at it that way. They give you one chance, one shot, and that's it.
Before I let you go, I just really need you to tell me a little bit about. Tell me a really good Bill Walton story. because that guy, I mean, I'm thinking he might have taken you to a couple of Grateful Dead concerts, as far as I know. But I really need to know what that cat brought to the flavor he brought to the team, and ultimately just give me a really good story, because I'm just having a ball right now.
Bill was a different character. He was against the war, the Vietnam War, like a lot of people were,
Sure.
But he was more outspoken about that. And I remember one day, Bill was late coming to practice, and Coach Wooden was all over him. And Coach said, "Bill, why are you late? Where you been?" He said, "Coach, I was at the city and up on campus against the Vietnam War." Coach said, "You're supposed to be at practice." He said, "Coach, I think that's more important than being at practice."
Wow.
So,
Wow.
Bill walked to a different tune, but he brought a flavor to the team that we didn't have. You're talking about a great basketball player. What an unbelievable basketball player. And more so than that, he's a great human being. And that's what I liked about him. He and I go back years and years. We have a relationship for the rest of our life, and I have the utmost respect for Bill.
Can you explain what he brought to the team from a playing point of view that allowed you to grow even more when he was healthy?
Well, he was probably the best shot blocker I've seen, and probably the best outlet passer other than Wes Unseld.
Really? Wow.
To ever play the game. Yeah, he just knew how to play. I mean, just a smart player, knew how to play. And I didn't have to play any defense when he was on the floor, because I would filter everything to the basket, and he would block it, and I would just get out and run. And
right, you would just leak out, and so it was a perfect thing. He'd he'd block a shot, throw you the outlet pass, and you'd be off to the races.
Off to the races, and that was it. Bill was that type of player, and just a winner. Would do whatever it take to win the basketball game. That's what I loved about playing with Bill. Just a total winner. And that whole team we had, with Jamal Wiltz and Larry Farmer and all those guys, they were all winners. So how do you lose? You can't lose with guys like that.
You can't lose with Henry Bibby. Man, we've been cooking here 55 minutes, man. I had such a ball with you, man. And I am, like I said, I've done over 1,000 interviews with serious luminary artists, but I'm trying to connect back with the older guard of the athletes. So anybody you can hit to me, I'd really appreciate it. I just want to keep growing as a broadcaster, and I just had a ball with you, man. I thank you for taking the time today.
Well, I have your number, and I'll pass it on to some of the old buddies here, and they'll get in touch with you, okay?
Thank you, my man. It was great to hear you.
You too, Jake. Thank you.
Bye, Henry.
Okay.
Take care, brother.
Bye.
Legendary player, NBA basketball player, coach, and teacher Henry Bibby, still trying to pass on the lineage of the game of basketball, getting back to the roots of basketball, and ultimately trying to educate and inspire during this time. We will be back at 1 o'clock with Jay Messina and following that, Julian Priester. For now, this is the Jake Feinberg Show, and we'll be back in a little bit.